I want to tell you just a little bit. Some of you may not know who Patrick Henry is, but you probably do. I was already corrected on some historical misconceptions I had at the dinner table with some homeschoolers, so that was good. That was good and fun. On May 20th, 1775, a group of statesmen met in a church in Richmond, Virginia. This was the second meeting of this group of men. It was called the Second Virginia Convention. And in this convention, this was actually an illegal convention because they had been disbanded as a group of legislators in the, what did they call it? The House of Burgess. And there were some pretty neat men there. George Washington was there. Thomas Jefferson was there. Richard Henry Lee. And of course myself, Patrick Henry. And we had some other visitors. We had visitors from the island of Jamaica. You might not remember that in history. But they came over to try to convince members of our house that we should just give in to the give in to the British government, and that if we did, that we would return to happiness. They called it the halcyon days of old. And I want to share with you the resolution that I gave, that I offered, and then I'd like to share with you what is known as Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty" or "Give Me Death" speech, that you might be a little bit more familiar with. So I'm not going to stand here at the pulpit, if that's all right. I'm just going to kind of move around a little bit. Is that all right? All right. And Patrick, they always start, Elizabeth would know this because she's been a legislator. They always have to get control of they have to get the voice of the chair, and then the chair will allow them to speak. So Mr. Henry says, "Mr. President, I could but unite for the vote of thanks for the truly patriotic address of the legislature of Jamaica. The address was noble and inspiring. But in my opinion, it is absurd to rest quietly, expecting a return to those halcyon days of old. I beg to offer the following resolutions. Resolved that a well-regulated militia is the natural strength and only security of a free government, and that the establishment of such a militia is at this time peculiarly necessary for the protection and defense of this colony, and that the known remissness of the government in calling us together in legislative capacity renders it too insecure at this time of danger and distress to rely that any provisions will be made to secure those unestimable rights and liberties from those further violations with which they are threatened. Resolved, therefore, that this calling be put immediately into a state of defense, and that a committee be named by this convention to prepare a plan for embodying, arming, and disciplining such a number of men as may be sufficient for that purpose." After I gave this resolution, there were calls of treason, and there were cries of support for this resolution. And after much debate and back and forth, I arose once more to disabuse, or to change and challenge some of the things that have been said. And this is what I said after getting control of the floor. I said, "No man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as the abilities of a very worthy gentleman who have just addressed this house. But different men often see the same subjects in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to theirs. I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before this House is one of awful moment for this colony. For my own part, I consider it nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of the subject ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold towards God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time as this, through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself guilty of treason toward my country and an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kingdoms. Mr. President, it is natural for men to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth and listen to the song of that siren until she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not those things which so naturally concern their temporal salvation? For my own part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging the future, but by the past. And judging by the past, what has there been in the conduct of the British ministry these last 10 years to justify the hopes with which the gentlemen are pleased to solace themselves and this House? Is it that insidious smile with which our petitions have lately been received? Trust it not, sir, it shall prove a snare unto your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petitions comports with those warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our lands. Are fleets and armies necessary for a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. So I ask the gentleman, sir, what mean this martial array if its purpose be not to force us into submission? Can the gentleman assign any other possible motive for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of armies and navies? No, sir. She has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains with which the British ministry have been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Argument? Sir, we've been trying that these last 10 years. Is there anything new to offer upon the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is possible, but it has all been in vain. Shall we now resort to entreaty and humble supplication? We have done everything possible to avert the storm which has now come upon us. We have petitioned. We have remonstrated. We have supplicated. We have prostrated ourselves before the throne and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and the parliament. But our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have caused additional insult and injury. Our supplications have been ignored. And we have been spurned with contempt at the foot of the throne. In vain, after these things, may we indulge the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate those unestimable rights with which we have been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle with which we have been so long engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves, never to abandon. Until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be in the next week or in the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and when a British guard shall be stationed at every house? Shall we gather strength by irresolution and inaction? Shall we obtain the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely upon our backs and hugging this phantom delusion of hope until our enemies have bound us hand and foot? So we are not weak. If we give a proper use to those means which the God of nature has placed in our power. You people, our people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as we possess, are invincible to any force which our enemies can send against us. Besides, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone, but unto the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, we have no election. If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from this contest. There is no retreat, but into submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable. And let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate this matter. Gentlemen may cry peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen would wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty, or give me death.